The galaxy was burning. Stars that once shone bright were now covered with smoke and fire as fleets of alien empires clashed in a never-ending war. The war zone stretched across planets, moons, and shattered asteroids, where thousands of ships fought every hour and every second. Energy beams tore through the dark, missiles screamed across the void, and explosions painted the skies with colors of death. Every empire fought for control, each one believing victory was theirs to claim, but no one could truly win. The battlefield had no mercy, only destruction. Commanders shouted, soldiers cried, and war machines roared, yet above it all, the galaxy itself seemed tired of this endless bloodshed. And then, something changed. Far at the edge of the war zone, scanners picked up a signal. At first, the alien fleets ignored it. Just another ship, maybe another empire joining the madness. But the signal grew stronger, louder, and heavier. A shadow stretched across the battlefield as if the stars themselves were dimming. Suddenly, voices began to rise inside alien command decks. Fear entered their tone. No one said it directly, but every mind thought the same word. Humanity. The name echoed like a ghost from the past. Once, long ago, humanity had fought among the stars. They had built weapons that could silence entire worlds and ships so powerful that no empire could match them. And then, they disappeared. For centuries, no one had seen them, no one had heard from them. Many believed humanity was gone forever, only a story to frighten children or remind soldiers of old wars. But now, the signal proved otherwise. They had returned. And they were coming here. The alien fleets, who only moments ago were locked in brutal combat, hesitated. Cannons went silent, missiles stopped firing, and the battlefield froze. The silence was terrifying, heavier than the war itself. Even the sound of engines seemed too loud. Every eye turned to the void, waiting. Then the stars shifted. Something massive moved through the darkness, blocking the light of suns and casting its shadow across the war zone. It was a warship, unlike any they had seen in centuries. Long, black, and sharp as if carved from the void itself, the human warship glided into the battlefield. It did not rush, it did not fire. It simply arrived, as though it owned the stars. The ship was so large that whole fleets seemed like insects around it. Its surface glowed with faint lines of power, weapons hidden beneath armor thicker than mountains. The aliens stared at their screens, their voices shaking, their hands frozen above controls. Some whispered, "It cannot be them, it cannot be." Others knew better. Only humanity could build something like this. The air inside alien command ships grew heavy with fear. Memories of old battles came back to life. Empires remembered how humanity fought, not with numbers, but with precision, with strength, with fury that crushed every opponent. One ship had once destroyed an entire fleet. One fleet had once destroyed entire empires. And now, one warship had entered their war zone. Some captains wanted to retreat immediately. Some wanted to open fire before it was too late. But no one could move. The presence of the human warship was like a hand gripping their throats. It did not speak, it did not act, but its silence was more frightening than any weapon. Across the battlefield, ships drifted nervously, waiting for the first move. Would humanity destroy them all? Would it demand their surrender? Or had it come for something even darker? No one knew. The galaxy held its breath. Inside the alien flagships, commanders tried to send secret signals, but even communication felt dangerous. Every word might be the wrong one. Every move might invite destruction. For a moment, it felt as though time itself had stopped, frozen by the shadow of humanity. The skies that once thundered with war now trembled with silence. Then, for the first time, the human warship gave a sign. Its massive hull pulsed with energy, a faint glow like the heartbeat of a god awakening. Alien crews gasped as the light spread across its surface, outlining the hidden weapons buried deep within. Cannons that could shatter moons. Beams that could burn stars. The message was clear, even without words. Humanity was not here to join the war. Humanity was here to end it. The battlefield remained frozen, the silence deep and unbroken, as the human warship continued its slow, terrifying advance. Every ship, every soldier, every commander knew one truth. The galaxy would never be the same again. The human warship moved like a silent giant, gliding through the void as if the battlefield belonged to it. Alien fleets kept their weapons locked, but not a single commander dared to fire. Fear spread like poison across the war zone. The war that had raged for years was forgotten in an instant. Enemies who once hated each other with burning rage now shared the same fear. All eyes, all scanners, all hearts focused only on the shadow that had arrived. Inside alien command decks, the tension was unbearable. The largest empires, proud and cruel, suddenly felt small. The smallest empires, desperate to survive, held their breath. Old stories whispered among soldiers began to rise again, stories of humanity's last war. They remembered how one human fleet had defeated 3 empires at once, how one human general had ended battles before they even began. The name humanity was not just a name. It was a warning, a curse, and a promise. The alien admirals looked at each other across flickering holoscreens, uncertain, waiting for someone to take the first step. But no one wanted to be remembered as the fool who provoked humanity's return. And so, the galaxy froze under the weight of silence. The human warship did not speak, did not fire, and did not rush. It simply waited, its dark hull glowing faintly with lines of light like scars of ancient battles. The glow was not weapons fire, yet it felt like a threat. The aliens could sense it. The ship was alive, watching, measuring, deciding. Every second that passed made the tension worse. Alien captains whispered to their crews to stay calm, but their voices trembled. Even the most hardened warriors felt fear. The shadow of the human warship stretched across the battlefield, swallowing the stars themselves. It was not just a ship, it was a message carved into steel and fire. Humanity was back. At last, the silence broke. A sound rolled through every comm channel, deep and steady, like the voice of thunder. It was not in any alien language, yet every being understood the meaning. The voice said only this: "Cease fire, or be silenced." The words were calm, but they struck harder than any weapon. Fleets that had fought for centuries suddenly faced a choice: obey, or face extinction. The battlefield erupted in confusion. Some commanders screamed at their fleets to retreat, shouting that resistance was suicide. Others refused to believe. They claimed it was a bluff, an empty threat meant to frighten weak empires. In secret channels, admirals argued, their voices breaking into anger and panic. Some wanted to surrender immediately, to kneel before humanity and beg for survival. Others wanted to unite and strike before the warship unleashed its power. But even as they argued, none dared to move first. The human warship drifted forward slowly, like a predator circling prey. Its engines burned with cold blue fire, casting shadows across shattered asteroids and broken wreckage of alien ships. With each second, it drew closer to the center of the battlefield. The aliens felt the walls of fear closing in. Every scanner showed its size, its weapons, its impossible strength. It was not one ship. It was an army hidden inside a single hull. Whole fleets could vanish under its shadow. One alien general, shaking with rage and fear, slammed his fist on the control desk and shouted that humanity could not be allowed to dominate them again. He swore that the empires had grown stronger since humanity vanished. He claimed the old stories were lies, exaggerated myths from a forgotten past. His fleet commanders listened in silence, but none truly believed him. They remembered their ancestors' warnings. Humanity did not bluff. Humanity did not lie. Humanity acted. And yet, silence lingered. No one moved. No one dared to test the words. Then, slowly, one alien fleet began to retreat, engines flaring as ships pulled back from the battlefield. Another fleet followed. And another. In less than a minute, the great war zone was crumbling as fleets abandoned their positions, fleeing from the shadow of the human warship. The empires that remained were divided. Some watched with horror, knowing they could not fight alone. Others clenched their jaws, convinced they could not bow to humanity, no matter the cost. The human warship, meanwhile, said nothing more. It only watched, its weapons still hidden, its voice echoing in the minds of all who heard it. Cease fire, or be silenced. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy was quiet. Not from peace, but from fear. The aliens realized something far greater than their war was now before them. The return of humanity was not just an event. It was a storm, a shadow, a turning point. And whether they liked it or not, the galaxy would never forget this day. The Warzone that had once shaken with fire now drifted in silence as the human warship held its place among the stars. Across the fleets of countless empires, fear spread like a sickness. Commanders who once shouted orders with pride now whispered in doubt. Admirals who once dreamed of victory now questioned if survival was even possible. The shadow of the warship had not fired a single shot, yet its presence alone was more powerful than the combined fleets of 100 empires. Rumors began to spread quickly across communication channels, carried in hushed voices, each message filled with dread. Some said humanity had returned to reclaim the galaxy. Others claimed they had come to destroy all life that dared to fight without their permission. The oldest among the alien races remembered the wars of the past. They recalled how humanity never fought for glory, never fought for conquest, but always fought with a purpose, and always won. These memories were passed down like warnings, but most empires had chosen to forget them. Now, as the massive warship glowed faintly in the void, the warnings no longer felt like stories. They felt like prophecy. In secret councils, the leaders of alien fleets argued with fear in their eyes. Some called for surrender, believing resistance would only bring death. Others insisted it was all a trick, that humanity's ship was only one vessel and could not possibly defeat the combined strength of the galaxy. But deep inside, none of them truly believed that lie. The ship itself radiated a power that could not be denied. Its silence was not weakness, it was confidence. Humanity did not need to shout. Humanity did not need to threaten. Their presence alone was enough to command obedience. Still, pride burned in many alien hearts. Entire empires had risen in the centuries since humanity vanished. They had built fleets larger than anything before, weapons stronger than their ancestors had dreamed. To bow without a fight felt like betrayal to their pride. And so the war zone simmered with tension, each empire trapped between fear and arrogance. Every second stretched like an eternity, every passing moment pushing them closer to a decision. On one flagship, a general clenched his claws around the command rail, staring at the warship with eyes full of both rage and terror. He refused to believe the old legends. He refused to believe that one ship could end wars. His pride screamed louder than his fear. He gave the order to prepare weapons. His officers looked at him with wide eyes, their hands shaking over the controls. They hesitated, unwilling to follow. But the general's voice cracked like thunder. "Fire," he demanded. "Test them." The alien fleet moved, engines roaring as weapons aligned. Across the war zone, the other empires gasped. They knew this moment would come. Someone had to challenge humanity. Someone had to risk everything. As the fleet locked its aim on the human warship, the silence grew unbearable. Every commander in the galaxy watched, holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen. The human warship remained still, almost patient, as if it had been waiting for this test. Its dark hull gleamed faintly, reflecting the light of distant stars. The alien general shouted again, and finally, the first barrage was launched. Missiles screamed through space, beams of energy tore through the darkness, and plasma fire lit up the skies. The attack was massive, enough to annihilate an entire empire's fleet. The galaxy watched in horror and in hope. Would humanity fall? Would the legends be broken? For a moment, the battlefield burned so brightly that the stars themselves seemed to vanish. But then the light cleared, and the human warship was still there. Unbroken. Untouched. Its shields shimmered like a wall of fire, swallowing every weapon as though it were nothing. The alien general froze, his heart sinking into despair. His fleet trembled, their weapons powerless, their hope destroyed. And then, For the first time, the human warship moved. Slowly, calmly, it shifted in the void, its weapons glowing with a deadly light. The galaxy understood instantly. The test was over. Humanity had been challenged, and now humanity would answer. Across the war zone, fear reached its peak. Fleets that had once stood proud now prayed silently to whatever gods they believed in. The alien general screamed for his fleet to hold position, but his voice was drowned by the rising hum of the human warship's weapons. The shadow stretched longer, darker, as the ship prepared to strike. And every soul in the galaxy knew that this was only the beginning. The silence after the alien fleet's attack was heavier than any explosion. Across the battlefield, thousands of ships waited, their crews staring at the screens in disbelief. The human warship had taken the full force of a massive strike, but it still drifted calmly in the void, untouched, as if the barrage had never even happened. Its shields glowed faintly, shimmering like ripples across a dark ocean, then faded again into silence. The alien general who had ordered the attack felt his courage collapse inside him, yet pride kept him standing. His crew looked at him with fear and anger, their voices trembling as they whispered that it was over, that humanity could not be fought. But the general refused to accept it. He shouted again, demanding another round of fire, though his voice cracked with panic. Before his order could be obeyed, the human warship finally moved. The ship's hull began to glow with long, deep lines of energy, each one burning brighter as power surged through the ancient vessel. The glow spread across its massive frame until it looked less like a ship and more like a living beast awakening after a long sleep. Alien crews across the battlefield felt their bodies tighten with fear as the hum of power reached their ears through their comms, a low and steady vibration that seemed to shake the stars themselves. Then, with terrifying calm, the human warship fired. A single beam of light shot forward, cutting through the void with impossible speed. It was not like any alien weapon. It was cleaner, sharper, more controlled, a blade of pure destruction. The beam struck the alien general's fleet, and in an instant, entire ships disintegrated into dust. The attack did not explode or scatter. It erased. Hundreds of ships vanished with one strike, their wreckage reduced to glowing fragments drifting silently in space. The battlefield gasped as fleets watched the impossible unfold. The general's flagship shook violently, alarms screaming, lights flickering. His officers looked at him with wide eyes, and for the first time, his pride failed him. His voice broke as he cried for retreat, but it was already too late. The human warship's weapons pulsed again, brighter, louder, alive with a fury that no alien could comprehend. Another beam cut through the void, followed by a storm of energy bolts raining across the fleet. The destruction was precise, deliberate. Ships exploded one by one, each destroyed with a cold efficiency that showed no mercy. The galaxy watched in silence, unable to believe that one vessel could hold such power. Fleets that had once believed themselves invincible now realized how small they truly were. The human warship was not simply fighting. It was demonstrating. It was reminding the galaxy of what humanity had always been. The alien fleets that had not attacked began to panic. Some immediately pulled back, their engines burning as they fled from the battlefield. Others froze in place, too terrified to move, praying they would not be the next target. Across command channels, voices shouted in panic, each empire blaming the other, each one desperate to find a way out. But there was no way out. Not against this. The human warship's weapons finally grew quiet. The glow across its hull dimmed, though faint sparks of energy still pulsed like a heartbeat. It did not pursue the fleeing ships. It did not continue the slaughter. It simply stopped and waited once more, as if its point had been made. The war zone that had once roared with fire was now silent, broken, and full of fear. The few survivors of the alien fleet drifted among the wreckage, their voices weak, their spirits shattered. The general who had dared to test humanity slumped in his chair, his pride completely gone. His fleet was dust, his empire humiliated, his name destined to be remembered only as the fool who woke the storm. Across the galaxy, the message was clear. The human warship did not need numbers. It did not need allies. It was power beyond reason, and no empire could hope to stand against it. The silence stretched on, deeper and darker than before, as if the void itself bowed to the presence of humanity's shadow. And yet, everyone knew this was only the beginning. The warship had revealed only a glimpse of its power, a fraction of its wrath. The galaxy trembled, waiting for what would come next, knowing that their fate now lay in the hands of a species they had almost forgotten. Humanity had returned, and their first strike had changed everything. The battlefield drifted in uneasy silence, broken ships glowing faintly as they floated through the void like tombs of fire. Alien fleets that had once filled the skies now scattered, their courage shattered, their voices lost in fear. The human warship hovered among the wreckage, calm and steady, its black hull gleaming faintly with lines of light. It had struck once, and that strike had been enough to remind the galaxy of who held true power. No more weapons fired, no more fleets advanced. Every ship in the Warzone waited, frozen, unsure of what would happen next. Then, for the first time since its arrival, the human warship spoke again. The voice rolled through every comm channel at once, heavy and cold, echoing in the minds of millions. It was not loud, but it was impossible to ignore. The words were simple, yet terrifying: war ends today, or humanity ends it for you. The message spread like fire. Across command decks and battle bridges, crews froze, their eyes wide, their hearts pounding. The meaning was clear. The empires could surrender and end their endless war, or they could be erased from the stars. Panic erupted across hidden channels. Admirals screamed at each other in secret conferences, their voices full of fear. Some demanded surrender at once, insisting that survival was worth more than pride. Others, trembling with rage, declared they would never kneel to humanity. They spoke of resistance, of hidden weapons, of secret alliances. But their words sounded weak, even to their own ears. They knew the truth. The first strike had proven everything. Humanity had not returned weaker. Humanity had returned stronger. On smaller ships, soldiers and crew members whispered among themselves. Many begged their leaders to obey the human warning, to stop fighting before it was too late. They were tired of war, tired of death, tired of watching friends vanish into fire. Some even wept in silence, praying to gods they had long forgotten, hoping humanity's wrath would not fall upon them. Yet in the hearts of some empires, pride still burned. They could not accept defeat. They could not bear the thought of bowing to a species that had disappeared for centuries. Secret messages were sent across encrypted channels, carrying promises of alliance. Hidden fleets were ordered to prepare. Spies were told to move. They believed if they joined together, if they struck with everything they had, they could bring down the warship. But even their secret plotting was shadowed by fear. Humanity's eyes seemed to see everything. Every whisper, every thought, every secret plan felt exposed under the gaze of that dark warship. On the bridge of the human vessel, the silence continued. No one outside knew how many humans crewed the ship, or if perhaps it was guided by machines, or even by something greater. All they knew was that it waited, patient, unshaken, certain that the galaxy would bend. 4 hours, fleets remained still, caught between terror and pride. The wreckage of the destroyed armada drifted slowly past their screens, a reminder of what defiance meant. Finally, one empire made its choice. A fleet lowered its weapons and transmitted a single signal: surrender. They would cease fire. One by one, other fleets followed, some out of fear, others out of exhaustion. They admitted defeat, hoping humanity would show mercy. But not all joined them. In the dark corners of the Warzone, ships remained armed, their admirals glaring at their screens with hatred. They promised themselves they would not fall so easily. They would not bow to humanity's command. The warship responded to none of them. It accepted no words, no excuses, no bargains. It only waited, its message still echoing across the galaxy like a hammer of judgment. War ends today, or humanity ends it for you. Across planets far from the battlefield, citizens watched through news screens, their voices shaking as they whispered the same thought: humanity was back. Children who had never heard of them before now spoke the name with awe and fear. Leaders of worlds outside the Warzone trembled, wondering if their empires would be next. The galaxy had changed in a single day. The human warship had not conquered, had not destroyed, had not claimed territory. It had simply spoken, and the stars themselves had listened. Yet in the shadows, a storm was building. Those who refused to bow whispered their plans, swearing that they would unite, that they would find a way to destroy humanity before it was too late. But even as they spoke, their hands shook, their hearts pounded, and their eyes kept returning to the glowing shadow in the void. They had challenged the warship once, and it had survived without effort. What would happen when it struck again with its full power? That question haunted every mind, filling the galaxy with dread. And deep within the silence, the human warship continued its watch, patient and merciless, as if it already knew the choice the galaxy would make. The galaxy had grown quiet, but the silence was not peace. It was fear. The human warship hovered in the heart of the battlefield, unmoving, its black frame glowing faintly as if alive with hidden fire. Fleets had lowered their weapons, empires had fallen silent, and the war that had consumed stars was brought to a sudden halt. Yet even as many bowed to humanity's command, not all were willing to kneel. In the shadows, whispers spread. Secret messages traveled through encrypted channels, carrying words of rebellion. Some empires had waited centuries for the chance to prove their strength, and they refused to let their pride be crushed by a single ship. They told themselves that humanity could be defeated, that the warship was not invincible, that it was only a relic of the past. But even as they spoke, doubt poisoned their words. They had seen the first strike. They had seen an entire fleet vanish in a breath. Still, hatred burned stronger than fear. They gathered in silence, forming an alliance that no one else would know about. Hidden fleets were summoned, spies moved like shadows through the void, and assassins were chosen for missions that none of them expected to survive. Their plan was simple: strike the human warship from within. No weapon of theirs could break its armor, no fleet could face it head-on, but perhaps sabotage could succeed. Perhaps, if they could plant explosives, cut its systems, poison its crew, they could bring down the beast from the inside. Across the Warzone, while fleets pretended to retreat or submit, small ships broke away under cloaks of silence, invisible to most sensors. They moved carefully, slowly, hiding among wreckage and drifting asteroids, closing in on the human warship. Their crews whispered prayers, not of hope, but of desperation. None believed they would live, but they carried the pride of their empires with them, willing to die if it meant striking humanity. On their bridges, commanders spoke through hushed voices, promising that soon the galaxy would see the human shadow broken. Soon, they said, the legend would be revealed as nothing but a story. Yet even as they spoke, their hands trembled. For deep inside, they feared the warship already knew. And they were right. On the human vessel, sensors scanned silently, more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever built. The ship saw through wreckage, through cloaking fields, through deception. It tracked every hidden ship, every shadow moving in the void. Still, the warship did not move. It allowed the assassins to come closer, as if waiting to see how far they would go. The galaxy continued to hold its breath, fleets watching in silence, unaware of the secret game playing out before their eyes. Then, at last, the hidden enemy made its move. Small ships darted forward, faster than lightning, trying to slip past the glowing hull. Mechanical pods launched from their sides, carrying sabotage teams armed with drills, explosives, and weapons designed only for suicide missions. They latched onto the human hull, their claws digging into the black armor. The saboteurs began their work, cutting, drilling, burning through layers of steel older than their empires. Inside their helmets, their breathing was heavy, their voices frantic. They thought, for a moment, that they might succeed. But then, the warship answered. Without warning, the surface of the hull shimmered, glowing bright as energy surged beneath it. The saboteurs' tools melted in their hands, their armor burned against their skin, and the black steel beneath them shifted like living fire. Screams echoed across their comms, cut short as their bodies dissolved into ash. The pods themselves broke apart, fragments scattering into the void. In seconds, the sabotage teams were gone. The watching fleets gasped, their hidden hope crushed. And then the human warship turned its gaze toward the ships that had carried the assassins. Its weapons did not glow, its cannons did not fire. Instead, its voice filled the galaxy once more, calm and merciless. You believe shadows can hide you. You believe silence protects you. But humanity sees all. The words fell like chains across the battlefield. The hidden alliance was no longer hidden. Every empire now knew who had plotted rebellion, who had dared to defy the warning. The accused fleets panicked, engines flaring as they tried to retreat, but the human warship was faster. A storm of light erupted from its weapons, beams and bolts slicing through space with surgical precision. The traitor fleets were torn apart in moments, their ships shattering like glass. No cries were heard, no mercy was given. Only silence remained. When the destruction ended, the warship returned to stillness. Its voice spoke once more, quieter this time, yet heavier than before. This was a lesson. The next will be judgment. The fleets that remained did not dare to move. The galaxy itself seemed to shrink beneath the shadow of the human warship. They had seen what defiance meant. They had seen what shadows could not hide. And they knew the end was coming. Humanity had returned, and there would be no escape. The galaxy stood on the edge of silence, fleets broken and commanders trembling, as the human warship remained still in the heart of the void. Its shadow stretched across stars, swallowing the battlefield like a storm that never ended. The rebels who had dared to strike had been erased, their fleets shattered, their names already forgotten by those too afraid to remember them. What remained were shattered empires, stripped of pride, left only with fear. Across their bridges and councils, leaders whispered the same truth, though none dared to speak it aloud. The war was over, not because they chose peace, but because humanity demanded it. Yet still, pride clung to the hearts of some. In hidden corners of the galaxy, the most stubborn empires gathered their final strength. They believed the warship was powerful, but not unstoppable. They told themselves that unity would save them, that if they combined every weapon, every soldier, every fleet, they could stand against humanity. They had no choice but to try, for to kneel was to lose everything. And so, in the darkness, the last alliance was born. Fleets moved silently, pulling from every corner of the galaxy, bringing together warships by the thousands. They hid their gathering from the others, convinced that secrecy could give them an edge. But the galaxy whispered in fear, and whispers always reach humanity. The human warship waited, patient, as if it already knew what was coming. When the alliance finally revealed itself, it did so with fury. Thousands of ships erupted into the warzone, engines blazing, weapons ready, their commanders shouting with desperate pride. The sky became fire once more as fleets moved into position, surrounding the single human warship. They believed numbers would save them. They believed courage would carry them. For a brief moment, hope burned in their hearts. The signal to attack was given, and the void lit with destruction. Missiles screamed, beams tore across the darkness, plasma storms roared like suns. The combined power of half the galaxy fell upon the human warship. For a moment, it was hidden in fire, swallowed in light, consumed by the wrath of empires who refused to bow. The watching fleets dared to hope. They dared to believe the legend was finally broken. But when the fire cleared, their hope died. The human warship stood unbroken, its shields glowing brighter than before, its hull untouched, its presence stronger than ever. The Alliance fleets froze, their courage shattered in an instant. Then, with slow and steady purpose, the human warship unleashed its true power. Energy roared across its frame, every weapon glowing like a star about to be born. The hum of its systems shook the void, a sound so deep it felt like the heartbeat of the universe itself. And then the strike began. Beams of light erupted in every direction, cutting through the Alliance fleets with terrifying precision. Ships that had survived countless wars were torn apart in seconds. Entire formations collapsed as wave after wave of destruction swept through them. The void burned with light, brighter than suns, as the warship erased thousands of ships with calm efficiency. The Alliance screamed in panic, their commanders shouting orders, their crews crying for escape, but there was no escape. The human warship did not chase. it did not waste. Every shot struck true, every blast ended lives, every beam carved through fleets like paper. The galaxy watched in silence, unable to breathe, as the last hope of resistance crumbled into ash. In less than an hour, the greatest alliance the empires had ever built was gone. Their fleets were wreckage, their voices silenced, their pride destroyed. Only fragments drifted in the void, glowing faintly like dying stars. The human warship stood alone, untouched, its weapons dimming as silence returned. Then its voice echoed once more across the galaxy, calm and final. The war is over. The galaxy will choose peace, or humanity will choose for it. No one argued. No one resisted. Fleets lowered their weapons, empires bent their pride, and for the first time in centuries, the fires of war went dark. Planets lit their skies with surrender signals, leaders bowed their heads, and soldiers laid down arms. The galaxy trembled not from battle, but from the weight of judgment. Humanity had spoken, and the stars themselves obeyed. The human warship drifted slowly away from the battlefield, leaving silence in its wake. Behind it, the empires it spared watched with fear, knowing that its shadow would never leave them. They knew humanity did not need to rule. Humanity did not need to conquer. Humanity only needed to remind them who truly held power among the stars. And as the warship vanished into the void, every empire, every commander, every soldier carried the same thought in their hearts. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy would never forget the day of final judgment.